Exactly.
So it is episode 666. I want to talk about some spooky things. So, as far as demons know, your demon knowledge, Wendigoon.
Yes.
You've looked into it a ton. What's like an indicator to you when you're reading a demon story that you're like, this is made up, this is fake? And what are the ones that get you like, oh, I kind of buy this. I think this could be a real one.
So the thing that's like, as someone who like, believes in it, like I'm a Christian, I'm not like some levels of religious Christians will get to where it's like recently I covered a video game called Faith that revolves demons, and talking to the creator, he's like, yeah, I get emails all the time from people who think if you put like a pentagram in a game, you're going to hell. Like, obviously that's not the level I'm at. You've seen the content I cover. But as far as like reading stories about demonology or whatever, it's typically the theatrics of it. For that same reason, I believe possessions can happen, but I believe that like 99% of them are fake. Because a demon's MO, or like within Christianity, right? Like the devil's MO isn't to scare people or be weird and strange. Like he's not just creeping around like, hoo-ha, they're going to be so afraid of this one. That's what most like demon stories revolve around. It's just to divert people. It's just to point them away from God or Christianity or what have you. Most examples of demonic influence throughout like the Bible or old like, religious traditions aren't even people who are like, frothing at the mouth, possessed, yelling obscenities. That's not even what they do. Most of what they do is just being like leaders, people who will, take the poor and the hungry and push them back to some righteous way until eventually bringing them into cult activities or what have you. I would say that in my belief, there's a lot more possessed people in places of power or what have you than there are like, satanic cult members. Like the Church of Satan and the Satanic Bible, and that's just poser stuff. That's all a joke. But the real stuff, so to speak, is just manipulation.
$50 wasted.
Yeah.
Lifetime membership fee for Kyle. There's like Rube.
I pay dues, goddammit. This is horse shit.
The one thing that like I've researched lately, there's kind of a white whale for me in demonology of like something that I think would make a really cool video that I think I could dissect, but I'm a little afraid to. Is this thing called the Lesser Key of Solomon. Are you familiar with it? Is anyone familiar with it? So
I think I have heard of this, yes.
So the Lesser Key of Solomon is a book that was its final version, like the version that exists now was assembled around like 1720, like just pre-America or government America. But the writings of it supposedly trace all the way back to like 800, 900 BC. So in the original like Judaism lore, and by extension Christianity, but primarily Judaism, when Solomon, the son of King David, built the temple in Jerusalem, he used all of his wisdom and power to do it. It's believed in most Abrahamic religions that Solomon was the wisest man who ever lived because he asked the Lord for wisdom, the Lord gave him wisdom, blah, blah, blah. So Solomon, being the wisest man who ever lived, was able to use a lot of powers of spirituality to build the temple. And again, in Judaism, it's believed, maybe not in their canon, but at least in, Judaism adjacent beliefs, that he effectively enslaved several demons to commission the building of the temple. That's how the temple was built in record time. There's all this weird stuff with the temple, like the geometry of it is so perfectly done, like the way the walls are cut. It doesn't make sense for something done, in BC time period. It's like an architectural marvel for the time that it was built. So one of the beliefs is that he used demons to do that. The Lesser Key of Solomon was supposedly assembled by his workers, or the human workers at least, in the construction of the temple. The Masons, as they were called, which is where the Freemasons eventually get their name. They use a lot of the symbols and stuff from Solomon's builders. And there's whole connections between demonology and Freemasonry. That's another can of worms. But with the construction of Solomon's temple, it's believed that perhaps he enslaved demons. So a book called The Lesser Key of Solomon is the traditional beliefs of supposedly how Solomon managed to enslave these demons. So it is a book that is made up of 72 different demons that describes their name, their MO, what they do, what they look like, how they appear, as well as summoning rituals. So like the things you're supposed to draw, the things you have to do to bring them in. And going back to what I mentioned earlier of like the thing that tips me off demon stories are fake is the theatrics of it. The way that like you summon most of the demons in this book is like, forget to pray for a day. Or yeah, exactly. Yeah, which is so much more menacing than just like, oh, dude, cut yourself and draw blood or whatever.
I need a bunch of chickens and
exactly. It'll be like, forget to pray for a day, or don't spend any money today. Instead, leave it near your bed, or like put the money under your bed, or stuff like that. Like these subtle things that you don't think about at once, but it slowly lulls you into this idea of either self-reliance or trusting a demon in some sense. Stop looking to God for all your answers. Just, you can take care of yourself. You should be looking to yourself for answers. Mm-hmm. And then by the end of it, it gives you summoning rituals and what you can ask of these demons. So there's some that will give you wealth. There's some that will give you love. And again, the most demonic stories in pop culture are around, this demon wants to damn your soul to hell. They want to curse you and blah, blah, blah. But again, the way it's normally given throughout Christianity's lore is they want to give you good things. They want you to trust them. They want you to come over to their side because their ultimate goal is to point you away from what's true and holy. So because of that, there's nothing in the Lesser Key of Solomon that says, and if you do this, your house will burn down, or you have to sacrifice your firstborn. It's all like, you'll get money, and then everything will be good. Look at that. You did it yourself. And because of that, it is the most menacing. It scares me so much. The concepts of it, it bothers me. Because, like, yeah, you hear all these stories, like you on YouTube, how many, summoning the devil at 3 a.m. videos, whatever. Like, sure. All those are clearly fake. But if someone was to do like a Lesser Key of Solomon, they're like, oh, look at that. My stocks went up this week. How lovely. Absolutely not. It terrifies me. So I've thought about doing a video on that. But again, as someone who truly does believe in it, at least to a degree, I am so afraid of like being like, okay, hey kids, so this is the demon's name, and here's his sigil. Be sure to draw this on your bathtub or whatever. Like, yeah. But
the power that a demon could have through you with your audience.
Exactly.
You could put something out there that was seemingly innocuous and get thousands of people around the world to do it. Rituals, incantations, all sorts of things, sacrifices.
Yeah. He's already made me decide to spend money every day.
Yeah. I haven't remembered to pray in a minute. I'm going to be honest. I'm a little worried about that. Look, the thing is, if there was a demon out there, like I like the Crossroads demons analogy or not example and Supernatural. Basically, you go somewhere to the crossroads at midnight on wherever the fuck. Demon's going to show up, make a bargain with this guy. Sort of thing like, save my baby's life. And he's like, all right, but I get your soul in 40 years. That sort of thing. Mm-hmm. If that were available, there'd be a line. There'd be a line. There'd be a line of people TikToking their deals. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
There would be a reality show where the devil could make his own reality show with horns and like hell in the background. Here's last season's losers, and they're back there screaming in eternal flames, and people would come right on the show and try.
That's terrible. Yeah. Like basic macroeconomics tells us that as you increase the supply, right, this line, that the deals they strike will get worse and worse. You'll be trading your soul for like a tank of gas.
It's a tank of gas.
Economy's getting tough, Woody.
Yeah, I got had by the Crossroads demon because of soul inflation.
Eventually, they shut off the markets because the supply of souls is too much, and they don't need to intake anymore. The exporting's already enough of a hassle.
The demonic Fed is raising rates.
You can only have so many people who are rulers of the world. So like that's getting complicated.
Yeah, you got the demons have to be like, who wants something like less, like way less. Like we'll take
Senator, state senator. I got plenty of souls around here.
Senator.
How about Senator? Anytime, just let me know. We've got a couple positions we can fill out. Midwest states, if you're cool with that.
Kentucky's about to open up, I think.
You can be the president. Hear me out. Somalia. Like, no, I'd rather be a middle class person.
First
here.
president of Somalia.
Dude, well, what I'm learning from this, you're saying the demons, they aren't traditionally scary in that way, which actually checks out with Christianity. Like they want to imbue you with pride or one of the sins of thinking you can get ahead. But they also help people. They do things like curing the blind by the thousands, curing the deaf by the thousands. Curing the deaf. Yes.
The deaf.
So does that make you give any more thought to the Mr. Mark of the Beast theory?
Oh, yeah. Mr. Mark of the Beast? You're talking about the Mark of the Beast from Revelations, right?
Yes, with Mr. Beast. You've seen those people on... Yeah, Mr. Mark of the Beast. Have you seen those people on...
I did not. I should have
picked... yet? Have you taken it into your body yet?
Have you seen those people on Twitter? There's a bunch of people on Twitter who are...
I should have known that's where that was going, but that blindsided me. Thank you, Taylor.
Yeah, there's a lot of people online that are convinced that he's trying to pull the wool over people's eyes by pulling the wool off of their eyes.
It's interesting. Now, I won't say to Mr. Beast specifically, but
I don't think so.
Man, I have to give a good transition before I talk about this, or else it could get clipped so easily. Yeah. But not Mr. Beast, but insert another person is similar to a lot of Christian ideas around like the Antichrist, right? Like the purpose of the Antichrist is to unite the nations. It's not that the devil needs to win, he just needs God to lose, right? That's his whole purpose. So like for one, the devil's a losing battle. The devil knows it's a losing battle. He's just trying to get as many souls as he can while he's there. And what's the better way to get people's souls? By, tormenting them, making their neck spin around and like float off beds, or to be an administrator of wealth and, knowledge, prosperity, what have you.
Sure.
And it's interesting to see like the shift that had, because previous to, I would say, Enlightenment era, all stories around demonic activity were about that. It was always about like deals with the devil that were made of like the devil was portrayed as like a false member of the clergy, or perhaps a ruler or a king who'd come to people and give them, wealth and wisdom. The stories like Faust, capitalize on a lot of those legends. But then after the Enlightenment era, in time where it like the religious tone shifted from God being prosperous, the devil being prosperous, but God being a true prosper in like the afterlife. Once it shifted to these kind of black and white ideas of good and evil, like the devil, pitchfork, horns, going around trying to torment people. Once that cultural idea shifted, then our stories around the devil shifted. It went from, kind of this person who wants to give you what you want into someone trying to trick you, or someone nefarious looking to cause harm or kill as many people as he can. But again, to Christianity and Judaism, that's not his MO. That's not what he's trying to do.
I can believe that about the devil. That makes sense. If you've got some sort of figurehead, he's got his own plans.
Yeah.
But what about a rogue demon? That seems more interesting to me.
So that's an interesting point, and something I think about a lot with these things, because there, again, a lot of the stories in the Bible around demon, like he's described, around the devil, Satan's described as the morning star, right? He's described as beautiful, conniving, wise, and stuff like that. But there's also stories about unwise demons, seem like you said, rogue demons, just their own things. Like, for example, the story of the maniac from Gadara. He was a guy said to be possessed by thousands of demons, and he would wander the tombs himself. He had broken chains because the people of the village tried to chain him, and he would snap the chains and run into the countryside. And whenever he approached Jesus, and Jesus looked at him and he fell to the ground, Jesus said, "Who art thou?" And the maniac replied,
"We are legion.
We are legion, for we are many." Yeah, which is where that's why that line gets pulled into every, demonic story or whatever. And it says that Jesus banished the demons from him, and the demons went into swine that were in the countryside, and the swine ran off a cliff like they were crazed. So that's very different from like, the conniving, dealing devil. That's just like wild animals.
That's what Constantine does. If you watch the movie Constantine with Keanu Reeves, now I'm sure they made this shit up for the fucking movie. They're like, so maybe we just throw the demon in like a pig and then kill the pig. No, they threw it in a mirror and then shattered the mirror. I saw a movie recently with who used to the Gladiator guy. He's fat now. Russell Crowe. Russell Crowe made this movie like this year called The Pope's Exorcist. Yes, and I'm sure it's based on probably the last official Catholic exorcist or whatever. Probably, I don't know. but it's it's a silly movie. But at one point, he takes the demon and puts it in a pig and then kills the pig. And I can't remember if it was a real demon, or if it was just to go through the ritual for the mentally ill kid there. I can't remember if they said which it was, but I like both of those ideas a lot. I like the idea that we could maybe, and that's what happens in The Exorcist. Spoiler alert: his father, Karras, was it? Like lets the demon into his body and then throws himself out the window.
Yeah.
Did he throw himself out, or did the demon throw the body out because it couldn't stand to be within the pure body of the priest?
I think the demon threw his body out.
It couldn't cohabitate in a body, so that also had God in it, perhaps.
Yeah,
I like to believe that
because Pazuzu shows up in the sequels, right? So then canonically, it would be that the demon threw him out.
What's his name? Blatty is the writer, I think. He's got 3 names: William Blatty or whatever the fuck. Exorcist 3 is the true kind of sequel. If you've ever seen that, it's tremendous. It's very good.
Good movie.
Yeah. And I don't know. The demon, of course, wouldn't tell you whether he lost or won in the first movie, I suppose. But if you know what happened, it seems like he pretty much won.
The priest is dead. The demon isn't.
Yeah. And the priest suffers for all that time. Like this, just having to watch behind the eyes as he kills children and does all sorts of horrible things.
Are there any world leaders now, maybe of religious groups or whatever, that you look at and you're a little wary of? You seem a little
Taylor Swift,
a little demonic. I think Taylor Swift. She does have a good reputation.
She did the thing.
Did she?
Wait, what does that thing mean, Wendy?
Oh, that's just Illuminati, or
that means she's going to eat that redhead from Game of Thrones' pussy. That's what that means.
I was mixing it up with Kyle. I thought that was the vagina sign. I see they're slightly different.
I thought it was
only slightly.
Yes, because it's evil. Because ox is dangerous.
It is actually interesting. It is interesting how much in old folklore that I know we're joking about it, but in a lot of old folklore it was explicitly described as demonic. It's an evil. It's part of women's curse, of Eve, that a part of the devil is embedded with her. There's a lot of imagery around this being explicitly demonic.
Yeah.
Oh, that's no good.
We've all seen Alien, okay? And we know the vaginas are bad. They mean death.
What about the Pope? What's he up to? Do we need to keep an eye on him?
I'm not a big fan of Catholicism. I mean, I've been open about this before. I'm not a big fan of Catholicism. I don't like the idea of you have a religion and now you're all right, we got that whole God thing, but let's just we can run it. Let's put ourselves in charge, So I wouldn't say demonic or anything. I think that Catholic beliefs still, at its core, align with Christianity as far as the beliefs of Jesus and redemption. It's everything after that I'm not a fan of. As far as, I think there's a ton of religious groups throughout history that I would describe, if not demonic, then demon adjacent. Whenever they take ideas of Christianity and completely flip them around. For example, Church of Satan, the Anton LaVey and all that, posers, jokes. It's they were just edgelords. The entire synopsis of the Satanic Bible is, if God real, why bad thing happen? That's their whole, that's all they got. So I'm not considering him some mastermind or whatever, but I think instead religious groups who have taken large groups of people and then been you like God and Jesus, that's cool, but what if you did it this way? What if you changed a bit? For example, I would say Jim Jones. I would definitely consider him adjacent. I would consider Ervil LeBaron. He was one of the early members of Mormonism who brought a bunch of people to the desert, ended up being a serial killer, had his cult kill mass numbers of people.
Wow.
Yeah. I'd say
when was that? I'm interested in that.
Ervil LeBaron.
Ervil Redenbacher. He's the popcorn guy.
I want to say it was... Hold on, let me just type it in. His name's Ervil LeBaron. People joke because if you take out the R, his name is Evil the Baron. Which it was 1950s, 1960s it happened. So there was this
way more recent than I thought you were going to. I've been trying to find I've been reading a bunch of horror anthology books and shit recently. I bought the the Necronomicon, the compilation of all of H.P. Lovecraft's his short stories. Like any anthology book, a lot of hits, a lot of misses. What's a purportedly true story, Wendigoon, that you would point me to that has a shit ton of lore around it that might actually scare me? It doesn't even have to be. It doesn't have to be demonic. It could be anything in your like the spooky realm you inhabit.
A true story, though, right?
Yeah, something that like I could look to it, and it could even be like we don't even know why this happened, but it did.
The ones that always freak me out are disappearance cases, like got into thin air type things. I recently did one about the Yuba County 5. That case freaks me out a lot, but I think I have a decent explanation for it. It's not a fun answer, but it's like something that doesn't involve supernatural, right?
Is that like a murderer case?
Maybe. It's 5 guys went up into the mountains under very weird circumstances. They were never supposed to go up there. It's a long story. But 4 of them, their bodies end up being found. 1 disappeared. A lot of beliefs are that the one who disappeared was the guy who murdered. I made a video about it recently. I don't think that's what happened. Instead, I think that he was forced off the mountain. I think the boys were chased by someone up there, which isn't a fun answer. That doesn't make you feel better, but it's not explicitly supernatural like a lot of explanations around those stories tend to be. Some of the ones that I would say are more creepy in their unexplained nature are the case of Dennis Martin. I made a video about that, and my conclusion at the end was like, oh, who knows?
I don't know, but it's scary, isn't it, guys?
Anyway, that's weird. See y'all next week. Yeah. The case of Dennis Martin's up there. The case... what was that boy? Hold on. Let me type this in real quick.
You're good.
Boy.
Dennis Martin.
Missing.
Such an innocent name.
Yeah, he was 6, I think. He was 5 or 6.
Oh.
Garrett Bardsley. That's the other one I was thinking of. This was a Boy Scout. He was out on a fishing trip with his father. I can get into the details of these if you want, but if you just want the names, Garrett Bardsley, Dennis Martin, and then there's one more. Carried. I can put in like the highlights of the case, and typically it will pull up. Jared Atadero, Spanish. So Jared Jaryd, and then Atadero Atadero. Those are ones that it's kind of like, yeah, Taylor, go read that and tell me what you think, because I have no idea. That's weird. That's creepy. So the into thin air stuff tends to mess with me a lot, because typically the like details around it are so bizarre that it's like, I don't know, maybe his entire family decided to kill him for no reason. That's the only thing that could make sense in a lot of these. The unexplained stuff tends to keep me up at night. So yeah, I have fun.
I wrote all those down. I'm going to look into all.
What about the
little Jared, Garrett, and Dennis?
What about the events that Fire in the Sky are based on? That logger from Oregon or wherever who was disappeared for multiple days, 3 to 5 or something. All of his buddies saw the light. They were all out there working, logging. He got separated, went to investigate the light, goes missing days later, naked, and passed the polygraph for whatever that means,
Yeah.
But still passed it, and says he was abducted by aliens and they did gruesome experiments on him.
So that's another one of those cases that's kind of like, yeah, I mean, whatever you think. Like it's such bizarre circumstances, I can't pin it down. I haven't researched that one the way I would like a video topic because I haven't made it. But from what little I do know about that case, my idea around it was always either an intense psychosis, like from him, like maybe he decided to fake the lights in order to trick his friends and then like make up this whole story or whatever, either out of some level of wants to be famous, I guess, or psychosis, like I said. But even that's exactly. Come on.
When you say fake, fake the lights, what is? Can you backfill me?
Like I got a little experience in pyrotechnics and such. I'd have a hard time fooling y'all that the aliens were over the hill.
Yeah, exactly.
So in this story, there were alien lights or supposed alien lights that people claim to have seen.
Oh yeah, Kyle knows. Again, I haven't researched in a while. Kyle probably knows the details better than I do.
There was a bright light over the hill, like a blinding light, that they didn't want to investigate because all the other grown men were afraid. And this guy's like, ho, 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 and runs off and doesn't show up for days. And when he comes back, he's like naked in a phone booth somewhere calling 911. But yeah,
the aliens are incredibly sexually aggressive.
They were. If you watch that scene, it's so upsetting because they're very matter of factly. Like, it's like when you see the crocodile hunter with an animal. Like, oh, look at this, fucking measure, staple this through its fucking ear. Yeah, they don't feel pain like we do. Fucking roll him over. Let's shove a finger or two up his ass. See what? Yeah, it's the cloaca. Yeah, yeah, she's almost ready. yeah. Did you wash your hands? Fuck it. Roll her over.
You're like being peeled alive on an alien table, screaming, and they're like, "That's just air releasing from its lung." You just feel a sense of pressure, like a fish. You're just stop that, and it's like, wow.
See how it's all high pitched like that? Yeah, that's air escaping. They breathe it. Yeah, I know.
And then a big inhale, that's air escaping back in. For another escape.
It escapes the other way. Now that scene in the movie is one of the scariest movie scenes ever. Like it's terrifying.
It's one thing for someone to have you and want to inflict pain on you because they understand it, but to be kidnapped by something that doesn't even have the concept of pain, that's just there and treating you like another, like, I don't know, like a chunk of aluminum to be ored out or like an animal to be weighed and measured and cataloged. It's real scary. And the actor. And so the aliens don't look like super realistic or anything, but they're scary. They're scary to look at. Like they have those, it's the traditional gray aliens with the big heads and everything, but something about them is more predatory and mean, for lack of a better word. It's like they're aggressively, like at one point he's like, "Arr!" And one of them's like, "Oh yeah, give me a handful of this brown muck to shove into its mouth." And he's just like,
okay, well, that's awful. That's not even science. Can you imagine if you had
science
a lemur,
we can't understand?
If you had like a lemur on a table that you're torturing, and you're like, we need to get the information from this lemur's biology and its metrics, and it's just like, and you're just like, nah, that's obnoxious. Put this Quickcrete in its mouth. Shut it up. Like, no, now it's not even science anymore. That's just that's just Saw 6. Like when they really lost the plot.
That's just mean. That's all that is.
I like the idea that to the lemur, a syringe, they're just like, he's just poking us with a sharp stick over and over. Like they don't see any scientific benefit to you stabbing them over and over. So when the thing like puts a handful of axle grease in his mouth, which is what it looks like. It's like, it's like they have no idea that this is this is magical axle grease. It tells us everything you need to know about a human.
10 out of 10 lemurs hate having their eyelids cut off and mascara smeared into it.
I would also suggest some like cult leaders are often kind of treated as like a hee hee ha ha, like a goofy, like, isn't this guy quirky? Like, even if there were murders, it's like, wow, these people were so dumb or whatever. But when you read about like some of the ways that cult leaders indoctrinated people around them, it is depressing. Like Ervil LeBaron, he was one of the guys. He's a lot of people misunderstand LeBaron as being like a founder of Mormonism. He was famous because in the early days of Mormonism, he got kicked out and started like a whole cult separate to Mormonism.
Okay.
He was like a big practicer of polygamy and stuff like that. And what he would do is he had a theory that he pulled out of the Old Testament, and he called it blood redemption. I think it's blood redemption, blood sacrilege, something like that. And it was the idea that some people were so sinful in their lives, the only way that they could go to heaven is if they're murdered by righteous people and like a prayer said over them or whatever. So what Ervil would do is if there was like, say he had like, 20 wives or whatever, and say one of the daughters of one of those wives disagreed with him or tried to leave, he would go to the mother of that girl and be like, hey, do you want your daughter to go to heaven? You're going to have to kill her. And like he would talk these poor delusional people into murdering family members because he said it's the only way they could get into the gates. And like reading the testimonies of people who were in that group, oh my word, some of the most terrifying stuff ever. That guy was absolutely evil. But yeah, there's a lot of cult leaders like that who are very messed up.
Who are some other interesting, some other cult leaders? I'm woefully misinformed or uninformed, I guess, on so much of the cult shit. I don't know enough about that. Heaven's Gate is about like the extent of what I've looked into, but that's like the Beatles of cults. Like, and so like you can't really say like, oh yeah, I'm into cults, and it's like, name 3 cults. Heaven's Gate.
Name their album. Name 3 of their albums.
Yeah,
Go
name
ahead.
3 of their albums, idiot. Oh man, I've been called out. So I need to find a better one. But like you're 1,000,000% right about the whole cult thing of people being smarmy and smug. Like these idiots, they didn't know. It's like
these
people who are in like influence circles, cults, like they can't see outside it. By design, all of their interactions and the social cost of disagreement are incorporated into that. If they had a robust system and network of people who weren't involved in that cult, then it would be easier. Like that's why the first step of any cult or like indoctrination is separating you from your family, separating you from your friends, making you believe that nothing can be trusted except for what is said here. And when you're surrounded by a bunch of people who have done the same thing, you know, they've done. Tony, he distanced from his family and his friends, and he hasn't had an issue with it. What's wrong with you? Are you not bought in? Do you not believe what we believe? Like those kind of social
You're not going to let it down,
yeah.
are you? You're not. You're one of us. You're not going to go against it. Yeah, that happens all the time.
You like, pretty much your only friends and family are us now, and you're disappointing us. Like, what's going to happen?
There's this weird misconception, and a lot of it's just because they don't know any better. But there's this misconception a lot of people have that like happy people who were doing well in life join cults, but it's almost never that. It's like I don't know if I've talked about them before. I know it was on a podcast. I don't think it was on PKA. I talked about the Anthill Kids. Did I do this diatribe?
I don't recall the Anthill Kids. No.
Okay.
Tell us about it.
The Anthill Kids were a cult in the 70s. It was either the 60s or 70s. They were led by a guy named Roche Thoreau. Roche, I think it's either Roch or Roche. It's a French name. Roche was a pastor in, I forget what denomination of church. It was some branch of Christianity for
Seventh-day Adventist.
Yes, thank you. Seventh-day Adventist. Before he broke off and then up in French Canada began this farm. And what he would do is he would go to these people in bars. He would pray apparently for women like near like hospitals, like women who had miscarriages. Like he was seeking out people who were in the worst point of their life. And he'd effectively start with the evangelist thing of like, hey, Jesus loves you. Do you want a home? Do you want a community? And he started inviting people to this farm he was effectively building up in the mountains. And he did this for years. So for years, it was just a group of people who had nowhere to go. They were completely lost. And then someone offers them food, shelter, and friendship. And it was years of that before it became what it eventually turned into. And that's how people get indoctrinated to the point that they join and become a part of a cult. It's not just like, and I want to be abused by, some charismatic figure. But like Roche was... It was a very slow decline. The first step of it, I believe, is he started having them do labor. Like, okay, you go work and I'll stay here and run things. And people were like, yeah, that makes sense. And it's like, hey, do you care to help build like the houses around here? And they're like, yeah, that makes sense. And then it started to be like, I think I need to have children with the women here. And the single women were like, absolutely. Yeah, I'm down for it. But then the husbands were like, hey, I could give my wife to this guy. So then he has all these children that are his. And then after, I think the cult, there was a period of time he went to jail and like every day, all of them would come to the jail and talk to him. He went to jail for like several months. I think the cult lasted for about 15 years. And by the end of it, there were so many violence scenarios that happened. But one of the more intense ones was a woman tried to run away after I think he had forced himself on her. I can't remember the scenario. But she tried to run away, and it was in the middle of Canada in the winter, so it was freezing. And these men brought her back, and he, in front of everyone, he dragged her onto, like, he had like a church set up. He dragged her to the altar, pulled a hatchet, and cut her arm off at the front of the room in front of everyone, and no one did anything. They were just like, yeah, she went against us. What else are we going to do? And, she's crying and screaming. And then he just puts down the axe and holds her. and starts patting her like, shh, it's okay. And everyone was just like, yeah, this is fine.
This is what happens when you mess with the cult leader.
The thing that eventually did them in was a woman died during. It was something like she got sick or she got cut, and I forget the details, but Roche did something like he ordered someone to put a bag over her mouth or something like that. He ordered them to do something that got her killed. And then there was a period of time where they tried to hide her body, and then her family came looking for her, and eventually everything got found out. Oh, it was the woman who got her arm cut off. She escaped while the police were investigating, and she went to the police, told them what happened, and all of them got arrested. But yeah, these people were conditioned over the period of over a decade to be like, yeah, if he wants to cut her arm off, like, that's his right. That's what we get. And that's scary to read about, like situations like that where people are absolutely at the will of some madman.
And you have to remember like something else with it is like the longer someone is in a cult or in like one of those circles, the more like sunk cost is involved. And so like someone who's in a cult for 2 days is a lot more likely to be talked out of it. If you've been in there for years, like that is your life. Leaving that is not only changing your whole life and uprooting yourself, it's also an admission that you were fooled. And I don't remember who said it, but it's a lot easier to fool people than to convince them they've been fooled. And so like you spend 5 years in a cult, like that's your fucking life. Like you're not going to let anything separate you from that because those are your friends. That's your family.
So what are we defining as cults? Like what how do you know it's a cult? Like someone tells you, hey, Taylor, look, I found myself. There's this group of people. They got a new way of doing things, and I like it. And for the first time in my life, I feel at peace. You know what? I'm leaving my job behind. I'm putting all my money into this. We all did. And look, hey, I am definitely not the richest guy there, buddy. I'm gonna tell you that right now. We're pulling a lot of money together so we can all just live in fucking harmony. And that's all there is to it. I mean, there's a guy in charge, and he takes a cut. But Father Michael keeps us together. He keeps us guided on the path of that God wanted us to be on, the one he originally wanted us to be on. You know what I mean? No owls. And it's a good place. Like, what do you say to this guy?
I mean, it's hard because like so much of like the cult part is the insistence on removal of yourself socially from your existing connections. So if you were inviting me and you were like, yeah, bring your family, bring your friends, like we meet up every week and we're going to hang out and we do this, I'd be like, okay, this isn't a cult. They're not trying to separate me from my life. If you were like, hey, in addition to this, Taylor, I think you should come stay on this compound with me for a while. No, just you. I don't think your parents and your friends, I don't think they're bought in yet, honestly. Do you think they are? No, I don't think they're like you and I agree. But yeah, come on. Then I'd be like, okay, like this guy's trying to fucking put layers between me and the people I'm familiar with. This is a cult.
I've never seen anything like that, honestly. I'm glad that I was never cool enough, I guess, to be invited to a cult.
I haven't been invited either.
Not even the Klan. Like I remember my dad told me.
How many Klansmen are there? Like 13 FBI agents? Like, who the fuck is in the Klan in 2023?
Unironically. What he did have a cult question that got cut off. Do you remember?
I was asking about how the money worked.
Good. Oh, for the Anthill kids?
Yeah, well, in general, like how do they get people to give up their resources and give them to someone?
So it depends on the cult. Sometimes they'll have a few benefactors. Like sometimes they'll convince a couple rich guys, and that's where most of the money comes from. Sometimes, like I don't think Waco was a cult to the degree people say it was, but it's definitely a cult in some
Branch
regard.
Davidians, eh?
Mm-hmm.
The Branch Davidians, yeah. The way that they did it is Koresh just stayed at the compound, but everyone worked in town, and there was
how I know it was a cult?
Fun. How's that?
Because they're called the Branch Davidians.
Correct.
As a kid, that rolls off the tongue on the newscast, and you don't ever stop to think about what it means. David Koresh leads the Davidians. You know what I mean? Like it's a cult. The real question about that is, were they sexually abusing children and fostering an environment in which that was to be normal and commonplace? Or did the FBI lie about that after they burnt all those children alive?
So from all the research, all the stories I've read on the topic, I do think the FBI fostered the story. There were several CPS investigations before all of that went down. They were never able to turn up any evidence, and everyone who was a part of it vehemently attested that didn't happen. That was
I say it's
part of the
50-50.
case.
I'm 50-50 on it. Here's why. I just think, man, it just seems like historically and from every example we ever have, whenever you have some dude who's running a cult, it's all about pussy, and it ends up being about pussy for some reason. We haven't been able to put our finger on that one here yet, despite all our study. Research expert Woody here, he's delved deep and hard, and he hasn't come up with
as deep as I can. I don't mean to brag.
Yeah, it hurts after a while. So, but I don't know what they were. I don't know if that was the case or not, but I'd say 50-50 it was, right? It just seems like it almost always that's what's going on. Even with like the good religions, the ones that we pretend aren't cults, it's like that's what's going on there too.
I'm going to balance that out. I'm going to say 0% chance they were doing that, and it was the FBI lying. So now the average is back. No, I have done no research. I have no idea.
Okay, so let me tell you about this. So here's what I saw on the news, and I don't know if this was the FBI being like, "Oh, look at what we found." It was like a kid's sort of informational pamphlet that you would hand to, like, I don't know, a kid to prepare them for their sexual life that's coming right around the corner.
Like your body's changing. Like that.
No, more like David's gonna fuck you.
You may notice hair. You may notice hair where there wasn't hair before. You may notice a man named David walking into your room erect at night and demanding things of you. This is all part of becoming a woman.
Yeah, so I saw those pamphlets on the news, and the only question is, like, if you could find out those were fake, I feel like that's the little piece of evidence that matters to me.
So I looked into the pamphlets, and from every article I read, that was not evidence that was brought forward by any State Department. That was entirely mentioned by news sources and never backed by anything.
Yikes.
All the cult members said that it's kind of like, you remember how after, like, well, I was too young to remember, but looking back, after 9/11, they were like, oh, and we found the hijacker's passport in the wreckage. Yeah. Like that whole, like, no, you didn't. What are you talking about? Like, it was kind of like that. The news is like, hey, I know what we can do to be sensational for the next half hour.
Sure.
So from everything I read, that's
where'd that pamphlet come from? Like, where'd it come from? Someone made that shit. Someone printed it off of a printer. Someone stapled it together. Someone drew those little stick figure children. You know what I mean? Someone wrote it. Yeah. And the only answer that comes to mind is that's the sort of thing that our government does sometimes when they're taking somebody down, like a political figure or something like that. They make those sorts of false evidences famously. Like if you look at the sort of things they were doing to Martin Luther King or Malcolm X or, even we talked about, it's people we don't like as well. It's not like they're just picking on civil rights leaders, also like Fidel Castro, just all those Wile E. Coyote stunts they tried to pull, making his beard fall out, making him be on LSD during his speeches, all that craziness. I recently is a month and a half ago, watched one of your videos, and it was about a mystery that I had heard of before, but the time I'd heard of it before was probably from like one of those like Fox specials where they leave it up in the air. Was it aliens or the devil?
It's one of the two.
50-50.
It's definitely one of them.
But it was, and I think it might be one that I have mocked on here before because of one of the facts in the case. So this is, you'll know right away. I know the pieces. This is the one where that lady survivalist led her group of student survivalists, and only one ended up surviving their retreat, and that person that was a young lady, and she reported the rest of the group like falling ill, going into seizures, clawing at their skin, their faces and stuff, and dying subsequently. And she couldn't understand or make what was happening, and so she just fled. And like 2 or 3 more days later, they found her, but then they didn't go back for the bodies for like couple weeks or something like that. And by then the evidence was so and no one's ever really figured out. But it's could you help me out with like what
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's the Daban Pass. That's the region where it happened. It happened in I think it was the 80s, if I remember correctly, 80s, 90s, on the border of Russia and Kazakhstan in a region known as like the Khamar Daban mountain region. I gave most of the details in the video, but the short run through is that this lady was known for taking these groups of hikers on these like week-long hiking trips up into the mountains around Kazakhstan, which are pretty considerable mountains. You've got to be like a decent survivalist to begin with to get up there. And this specific group that she went with was a group of her students, so to speak, who she'd been doing it with for a couple of years. So they were like very experienced. And this pass that they were going on wasn't particularly hard by any means. It was comparatively easy. They had taken all the food that they needed for the amount of time given. There was other groups who were hiking the mountain at the same time that they had planned to have rally points where they would meet up and then continue. And then one day, I believe it was about 5 days into the trip, the other group she was supposed to meet with did not see her at one of these rally points, or her group. And it had rained the day before. So there's a good idea for what the region's like. It had rained the day before, so they just figured, oh, well, they probably just got slowed down because of the rain. And we'll see them whenever we get there. But sure enough, they get to the bottom of the mountain and that group isn't there. So eventually they launch an investigation. People start looking. And then about 3 days later, one of the students who was in that group shows up at a local city. And she goes to the police and tells them the whole story. The exact details of what she said isn't known. And then 2 weeks after that, and that's like one of the real suspicious details of the case. They didn't launch an investigation for 2 weeks. Weather was pretty clear at the time. 2 weeks later, they go look for them up on top of the mountain. And then there is video footage of the entire search for them and their eventual finding of the body. And then I believe it was 6 people. The survivor made 7. 6 people, all within a couple hundred feet of each other, are just lying dead in a clearing on top of the mountain. They're like, a couple of them are lying next to each other. One of them's like more towards the woods as if they're running away. 2 more together at the front of the woods. And it starts to paint a really weird picture. The initial idea at the time was that the survivor had murdered the others, because logically, if 6 people die, only 1 comes back, that would be the solution. However, there was no evidence on the bodies that there was any kind of fight or any kind of strangulation marks or whatever. But then even more suspiciously, after doing a full autopsy, there was no evidence of anything that happened to these bodies. They just kind of dropped over. There wasn't signs that you would see in hypothermia, like late stage, what is it? Like the lung fluid starts to contract or recede or whatever. And the skin of the bodies were too decomposed at this point to see if they were frozen up or anything. So it remained a total mystery of what had happened for about 20 years. Eventually, a reporter, actually it's like more like 30 years, it's like 28. A reporter eventually tracked down the one survivor and asked for testimony, because what had happened is she gave the police a testimony and then never mentioned it to anyone else. So she finally sat down with the reporter after 30 years and gave her side of the story and said that what had happened is they were just walking down the mountain. Everything was normal. It had rained the day before, although they were okay. They had ate breakfast. And then one of them starts screaming and coughing up blood. And then it was the teacher, runs over to help him out. She kneels down next to him and immediately starts coughing up blood too. She looks up at the group and blood is running out of her eyes, and she's telling them to get away. So, of course, the 5 remaining begin to freak out and run. And as they're running, one of the guys drop. Exact same thing happens to him. One of the girls, I think it was maybe his girlfriend or something, comes back to help. Same thing happens later. To her.
Carry on.
Yeah, it's like such a weird, bizarre story.
Yeah.
Eventually, the rest of them run, and the only one who keeps running and does not succumb to whatever's happening is the one girl who ended up being a survivor. She had enough temporary shelter on her back that she was able to set up camp for the night, although all of the food was with the people who had died. So the next day she did the math and was like, I can't walk for 4 days without food or water. I'm going to have to go back to the body. So the next morning she gets up, she goes back to the bodies, and they're all still laying there. They're in the exact same position that they had dropped down at. So she took her food and managed to make the hike. The 4 days, went to the police station. And the reason she said that she had never told that story is because she assumed no one would believe her and would think that she's covering up for some reason. Because, if one girl survives a hiking trip and then is like, no, they all started bleeding from the face, that's going to cause some suspicion, which is the reason she told
when
him.
they found the bodies, and you were saying they didn't see anything about them like having, died in a curious condition. Mm-hmm. What about all the vomiting and the blood and the?
So it had been 2 weeks outside. So like the top layer of skin was just like darkened, sunken in across the face. All the blood at that point had either, whenever someone dies outside in the woods, there's a lot of bloating and like pustules and other gross stuff.
Not to mention the crows had picked these people's eyeballs out, and like the foxes ate their lips off. Like God knows what was left of them.
Yeah, it probably looks pretty bad.
You can't see like the full body on the video, but he comes up to someone who's laying face down, and you can see his hands, and they're just like black and emaciated. So they're in a pretty rough condition. They weren't able to tell anything like if they're
like one of those Everest bodies you see.
Yeah.
Where it's like they look like a really old piece of dog shit.
So I think one of your explanations, and probably the one that you think is the best, is what I agree with, and it makes a lot of sense to me. But before we I feel like it's almost a spoiler. Let's see what Woody and Taylor, do you guys have any theories about like what could have gone wrong here?
So she didn't murder them.
You know where this happened, the time
that was
of
one
year,
of the theories.
And the roughly the
I like this game, Kyle. This is good. This is
the murder thing. The murder thing doesn't make sense because you said it was a woman who survived, and it was a group of people who would have like fought back if someone was just like started willy-nilly murdering.
Yeah, the survivor was like.
What about poison? Girl. Like, could you poison? Are there any berries that cause symptoms what they experienced, or any food like that in the region?
Go ahead.
Well, they're all survivalists, right? Like they know the poison.
They could be bad ones.
From the good.
I painted something today. It's terrible.
But these are.
Taylor, I don't like what you're doing. You need to lay out your
let me lay this out. So Wendigoon gave you like the fast forward version, but these are the best. This lady, like I think I've made fun of her before in the past. Like some lady led a bunch of kids up into the wilderness, and then they all ran out of their tents naked at night and froze to death. Like I think that's what I had heard. But no, like she was a legit like fucking Sarah Connor style survivalist lady who knew her shit and knew how many calories each person would need to be eating each day down to 100 calories. And like she was an expert.
Here's my theory.
Okay.
She looked at her food supplies, determined that there wasn't enough for everyone to live, found some way to kill the people around her so that she could, and made it out.
Okay. So murder is
the way I'm going on this.
Okay.
All right.
Did she report that they were like short on food during their expedition? I guess if you murdered someone for food, you wouldn't.
They could have made it out. They could have made it out without food as long as they had water, right? Because like they're survivalists.
4 days. Yeah.
To continue giving the facts, whenever they found the bodies, most of them had their food supplies still on them that hadn't been ate through.
Okay,
indicating that they didn't starve. So.
Oh, I'm gonna change my answer. There was a romance thing. She didn't like. There was some sort of interpersonal thing going on.
7-way, and she wanted to be she wanted a good old fashioned traditional 4-way.
Wait, God intended.
Like this guy,
Four men,
that
just
guy, this guy like a girl, but she wanted to be liked instead. So she murdered like 3 or 4 of them, so they wouldn't know she was targeting that girl in particular.
Or maybe
but it all happened so quickly, apparently, because they're all in that little area.
Well, if I thought it was that, I would probably imagine a scenario where she killed one girl, but then she got caught, and like maybe they were like, "You killed Amber. We're telling on you when we get back," and then she poisons everybody that night. Like
just became a brawl. Oh, you're saying she killed them after one murder? I see what.
Yeah. Because what are they going to do? Arrest her? They're 4 days out. They're like, I can't believe that's what would happen. They'd be like, I can't believe you killed Amber. And maybe they got into a fight.
You don't tie him up or something. If someone murders someone on a camping trip, you don't go, "Hey, strike one, Buster." That's fucking absurd. No, you would tie them up and leave them, if anything. Like,
if it was a cute girl and there were other girls there to be like, "Mark, you're not going to tie up Becky, are you? Her hands are turning blue. She said she can't breathe." what do you mean she can't breathe? Her hands are tied. She can't breathe.
I don't imagine.
You cut those ropes just to avoid the screaming.
This is funny because
no, that's how it happened. And then one guy got so tired of it, he tied them all up. And then
he just left them.
Just a random woodsman was like,
all 6 of them were tied up in one circle. Crazy how bears do that randomly.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm trying. There must be an answer to this that you guys know. I don't want you. I keep going back to poison. I don't understand what can make everyone do the same thing.
Yeah, according to my theory, the one that like I subscribe to, you're not far off with the poison.
Mm-hmm. Right. I was about to say that. Yeah.
What do they suspect?
Spill the beans, Wendigoon.
I'll spill the beans. All right. So this is kind of like a bit of a cheat because you didn't know this information going in. However, this region of the Khamar Daban region, which is again on the border,
it's full of ghosts.
Very haunted.
Notoriously full of ghosts.
The ghost.
It's the home of the Ghoul King.
Oh yeah, it's a bad area where we got bad with ghosts. Lousy with ghosts. Yeah.
Right with ghosts. All right, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's ghost season up there. You jest, but this is how most of the theories I read about. This is where they come from.
Fun. I like it.
They are. Anyway, so that region that's on the Russian border was used during the Cold War as a weapons testing facility. That is an openly documented fact that they would use the mountains to test mortar fire or artillery barrages, and most importantly for this story, gas attacks. There are specific strains of nerve gas that were tested in the region at that time that can last in the air for, I think some of them are up to like a year and a half. Like once they're detonated, they just have to disperse and then hopefully no one breathes it in. And a lot of them were detonated like in these completely obscure like canyons and mountains for that reason. Most importantly to this story, most of them are pliable to water. So if you were to physically flush a region or wash it, it would cause the gas to not be destroyed, but to move somewhere else. So the theory that a lot of people subscribe to, and the one that makes the most sense to me, is that they're hiking down the mountainside, and then it had rained the day before, which again matters for this story. So it rains, and this rain causes a washout of a mountain, a canyon, a valley, or something, and causes the gas to move along the mountainside. This group of hikers are then walking, and it's also important for this story. This was like in the final years of the Cold War, whenever stuff like nerve gas was being developed a lot. So it makes sense that if they did test it, it would still exist around there. So they're walking down the mountainside, and then all it takes, I forget what the name of the one I showed in the video was that was tested in that region, but it is so effective that like half of one of Kyle's vape hits would kill you instantly. It just takes a very minute amount. So as it's flooding through the region, one of them just breathes in a little bit, and that would immediately cause the lining of their lungs to begin to fall apart. It would cause the bleeding of the eyes and other soft tissues. Another detail I didn't mention, according to the survivor... Kyle's died. Yeah, see, like that, the nerve gas, there it goes. What? Well, I saw that scratch in your eyes. What I didn't mention is one of the girls who was affected, according to the survivor, she started bashing her head onto a rock and like scratching at her throat, indicating that it was painful or she could feel something in there. So that would explain what Kyle's about.
What about the rock? Because of the pain?
Oh, well, she would have been feeling like the inside of her eyes and like nasal cavity bleeding and flaring out. And according to this girl, she just started hitting her head against a rock as she was dying.
That is so fucked up.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal. That would also explain why one of them got affected, and then the person who came to stand in the same spot they were also got infected. There's also the very important mention from the survivor that it was foggy on the mountain that day, which could have not entirely been fog. So yeah, the theory that a lot of people go with, and I'm not the only harebrained one, this is kind of like the consensus online, so to speak.
No, I'm in, man.
That they were victims of old Soviet weapon testing. So
yeah, that makes when you said that in your video, I was like, yes, that checks too many boxes with it's in the right region, the right time frame. and the right effects. And I don't know anything. I'm sure there's some poisons that would cause that, but none that should be there other than the ones that were being tested there in the region. Now, whether it was a cloud of it that like moved in a special, unique way, that I'm not so sure. I could easily see one of them found the shell and had it in his bag. And then maybe the cops found it and were like, oh, call the military. And the military was like, you never saw this. Like something like that could have happened. But
that's
because the cloud seems like funky to me.
That's also part of the reason. So her original police statement was never published. She said later that's the story she told the police, and they kept it confidential for some reason. And that's also why people think the police didn't investigate for 2 weeks. Because the police are like, oh, well, that's the old weapons testing. We want to make sure that stuff clears out of the area before we go up there and go looking.
Because the military is like, hey, police, give us 2 weeks. And then trust me, you can walk on as much grass and turn over as many leaves as you like.
During the Cold War, anything like that would have been suppressed. The United States was suppressing tons of stuff, and the Soviets were even worse. You needed to hide every failure because it made you, it was life or death. If it looked like they might win that launch sequence battle, then they might actually do it. That's why you had to stay a step ahead.
So this is for Wendigoon. I was poking around your channel recently, and you've been leaning. You always do, but like scary stuff. I think that's my favorite of your content is like the unnerving, spooky things and
the weirdness.
What would your recommendation like? What's a good rabbit hole for me if I want to get like scared? And if it doesn't matter to me at all, if I end up at the end and I'm like, I don't buy this, or I end up at the end and I'm like, oh my God, this seems real. Take that out of it. Like just scare me.
Is there anything specific you're afraid of? Like, is there one kind of fear, one lingering thing that bothers you per se?
I'm more afraid of like serial killer style people than I am of like ghosts and that kind of stuff. So like someone who like tortures people is scary and like unexpectedly like is in your house one day and he kidnaps you and tortures you in your basement. That's a lot scarier to me than like, I think I saw an apparition.
Like, I will say because I've read, whenever I did the serial killer series, I read through a lot of transcripts of like evidence that like, initial police crime scene reports of how murders were and like interviews they did with the killer. And some of the worst ones I remember was William Bonin. I forget his real name, but the Golden State Killer. And the guy who was called like the Vampire of Colombia, his name, it was a Spanish name. I forget what it was. Those were the three that when I went through the series, I was a different person after reading through like everything that they did.
Okay. I'm not familiar with this guy, William Bonin.
So William Bonin, let me make sure I'm saying that name right.
Or William Bonin, perhaps?
Yeah, is it the guy who looks like me? He has long hair when you look at the picture, because everyone made that joke.
A little bit.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Everyone made that joke. William Bonin was a child murderer who, what he would do is, he had a couple accomplices who, if I remember correctly, were guys who were like either, I can't remember if they were mentally ill or if they were younger and just kind of like, he kind of suckered them into what he was doing. It started out as like, hey, we're going to rob some people. And then eventually it got to child murder. But he had this van he would drive around in, and he would get kids. He'd find like these boys who were like 14, 15. It's like, hey, you want to go to a party? We're going to have like beer and stuff. And he'd get the kids to hop in the van. Yeah, there it is. That's the picture everyone says looks like me. He'd get the kids to hop in the van, and it was in California. He would just take them down some back road, and like the details of what he did to these children are all manner of depraved for hours on end. And then like the part that I remember, because like, I read about a lot of stuff like that where it's like, he did XYZ to the boys, and then he would strangle them, I think was the way he'd kill them. But he would take stuff from them and then use it later as a joke. Like one of the accomplices said that there's one boy he killed who had like $40 on him. So he kept the $40, and the next time they picked up a kid, they're like, hey, you want McDonald's? So they go and get McDonald's, and he's using the $40 and poking his accomplice like, hey, remember where this came from? Isn't that funny? And like just like
Jesus, so
not
just sadistic.
Not just depravity, but like relishing in it, like how much he enjoyed it. Like, and when he was caught, like no regret, just like, well, there it is, you know. I think it might have been him. It might have been someone else, but I'm pretty sure it was him. That while he was in jail, he wrote letters to the mothers of the kids he killed, talking about how much he enjoyed killing them. Like,
I know that Albert Fish did that.
Albert Fish did
in the late 1800s. Like, and the Albert Fish letters are so fucking depraved. We've talked about it on this show years and years ago. Like, he like kidnapped, murdered, and then like ate children. Yeah. And then he would write letters to the parents of those children, bragging about how he maneuvered their kid, what he did to them before, how he cooked them, how delicious they were, thanking them for it. Like the most over, like if Albert Fish was a character in a movie today, you'd go, I can't get into this. It's unrealistic.
He's way too over the top.
It's unrealistic.
Yeah.
You know, at least tamp it down to a Joffrey or a Ramsay. This guy's over the top. I can't buy into this. Like, but they're really, it's a good reminder. Like evil, like there are evil people. Like there are people who not only are indifferent, but they get off on harming others.
That guy, Albert Fish, he was so messed up that when he was in court, he asked to be executed by guillotine because he said if he was able to hear the blood rush from his neck for a split second when it happened, that would be the best pleasure he could ever experience. Like just an animal, just like a monster. Yeah.
He was like independent, like he was sadistic and masochistic. So like he would torture the shit out of children, and then he would like put his penis and testicles like on top of his kitchen table and nail it to the table. Yep. Like that. Like, and so he was a lunatic
in places. Yeah, he was. That guy needed to be put down.
That's a fun like little story right before bed. Highly recommend it. Albert Fish. Look into him. Read the Albert Fish letter. It's reprehensible.
But yeah, so like
those are good suggestions. I got them pulled up now. Look at.
I think instead religious groups who have like taken like large groups of people and then been like, yeah, oh, you like God and Jesus, that's cool, but what if you did it this way? What if you changed a bit? Like for example, I would say Jim Jones. I would definitely consider him adjacent. I would consider Ervil LeBaron. He was one of the early members of Mormonism who brought a bunch of people to the desert, ended up being a serial killer, like had his cult kill mass numbers of people.
Wow.
Yeah. I'd say
when was
like
that? I'm interested in that.
Ervil LeBaron.
Ervil Redenbacher. He's the popcorn guy.
I want to say it was... Hold on, let me just type it in. His name's Ervil LeBaron. People joke because if you take out the R, his name is Evil the Baron. Which it was like 1950s, 1960s it happened. So there was this
way more recent than I thought you were going to say.
Yeah, there was this big schism within Mormonism. I believe the disagreement was over polygamy, if I recall correctly. Not a lot of people know this, but core Mormonism, like the parts of it that exist now, are actually super anti-polygamy. It's that there's a bunch of offshoots who have left the church because they're pro-polygamy. And Ervil LeBaron was one of them. So he brought like him and all his sister wives out to the middle of the desert. I want to say it was Nevada, New Mexico, one of those. And there was a bunch of other Mormon leaders who would preach against him, who would say that he's a what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, well, that too. But whenever someone is trying to divert people away from the church,
like a false prophet kind of.
But yeah, like he was a false prophet. He was a heretic. That's the word I'm looking for.
Heretic.
That he was trying to push everyone away from the truth. So he would have his members like roll over to that other church at night, and they would like stab preachers to death. There was one point that he was going to go on trial. The big event of Ervil LeBaron's life is right before he was finally caught. There was like 3 people that were going to go on testify against him, and within an hour, all 3 of them got executed like around the state at different locations. He had planned it that at the same time there would be men in each town. Like one got shot with a shotgun, another was stabbed to death. Like it was like a Breaking Bad level hit, like all at the same time. Because Ervil yeah.
All his accusers.
Because Ervil LeBaron had such a grip on his followers.
That's what happens to liars, Taylor. The Lord punishes them.
The Lord struck them down.
They were smited by God Almighty for their filthy lies about the great Kevin Spacey. I'll tell you what I would sell my soul to a Crossroads demon for. Go back and make Kevin Spacey fix that last season. I want to see what was going to happen.
For one season of a show that was already bad.
Of a show that was already downhill. I want to know what Doug was going to do. I want to know if he was going to kill that bitch wife of his. I want to know. I need to see it. Bring Kevin back. Hashtag save Spacey.
I think that's
all of his accusers are either dead or gone. And
I'm not sure that proves his innocence like you're implying.
It does not. Dude, the list of this guy's wives and accomplices on Ervil LeBaron is insane. Like, he had like 60 kids, and they included in that and also raised a couple of step kids as though they're like pumping his tires a little bit here. It's like, seems like a bad guy. Killed on behalf of the cult. That's a whole column in this enormous table. Killed on behalf of the cult. Why? Like a lot of yeses that they killed on behalf of this cult. So how old was he old enough that here's my question, because this is, I'm imagining, I know y'all haven't seen it, but the TV show about this where the guy had
Under the Banner of Heaven.
And were his children, like he had 60 kids or whatever, does that mean he had like an army of sons? Because you can imagine when that would be very formidable.
Killing. Yeah.
If you had 20 grown man sons, that would be difficult to deal with the guy who has 20 sons who are like 18 or older. Yeah. That would be a problem. Right?
Not as difficult as the guy who has 41 sons.
I grew up without a big brother, but I hear about this circumstance where like someone would beats up your little brother and then the big brother goes and beats them up. If there's 41 bigger and bigger brothers, like if you start going the totem pole, it's going to be a long fucking day before you get to dad to say anything about anything.
It's like a video game. He like sends out the C team first, and then you have to beat like the boss son who he had with like an enormous Mormon bitch.
He just sends 2 mean girls. He sends his 2 meanest daughters to get you first.
It's funny too, because this is going back to like medieval times thought. It's like I have to have so many sons because if not, this castle's getting destroyed. Like we gotta have more kids. Yeah.
You thought like, all right, I need like 15 sons because 8 of them are gonna die in the wars they're conscripted into.
Or at childbirth, like a quarter.
We don't understand how germs work yet, so that's gonna take a few.
We don't know what they are, but we're really afraid of them. Like people just die. It's weird.
Can you imagine how hard we pray?
Like back in the day, it was just like the only conception you could have of germs was like even them being airborne was just because you would get sick even though you didn't touch the gross person. Like that's the only way they could know. It's like, okay, so something's clearly going around here.
They thought it was the stink of the dead body.
Yeah.
Like oh no, like the vapors of it got me. That would make you ill. Like
they're almost close.
Which they were close. That's like
they were close enough.
Just put it together. Yeah. There was this thought process. This was right before germ theory came around. I want to say it was like American Civil War. I think it lasted to like Spanish Civil War, so like 1880s. The idea was if you were a doctor operating on living patients, right? So like an amputation, gunshot, whatever. The idea was that the blood of the living is good, right? Because they're not dead. The dead, bad, live, good. So if you get a bunch of blood on your hands and you let it cake on and harden, that acts as a protective layer against other things. So the idea was if you were working on people like in a medical tent, never wash your hands because you're supposed to have as much coverage from one person to the other. And then they tried washing their hands during World War I, and they're like, we're having like a 98% survival rate over what last year's demographics. This is incredible.
Isn't that like the Florence Nightingale story? Or like she was a big advocate of washing your hands.
Yes,
a lot of people at the time were like, shut up, you dumb bitch. Where's my blood bucket?
Meanwhile, a bunch of
pussies really. They don't understand how inoculation works. You need
there was a Muslim
dip your
guy
hands
somewhere,
in pus before surgery.
Oh yes,
really washing up. That same year, there was a Muslim in the desert. Oh, those fools! Like they knew, didn't they? Like
a lot of Middle Eastern countries did. You're right. Yeah,
a lot of cultures figured it out way before that.
Yeah.
And
working immune system.
Healthcare sucks. Healthcare
the Romans figured that shit out. They washed their hands.
I was watching a thing. They were talking about that device that was invented apparently during World War One. When you break your what's the bone from your hip to your knee? Is that a femur?
Femur.
So when you break your femur, that the biggest bone in your leg, the muscles pull the hip to the knee because they're under pressure normally, and the bone is now broken. So that bone slips past each shaft slips past the other, and so the death rate of someone who had broken their femur was massively high. It's like a career wound. This is a career-ending wound.
Yeah,
you're muted, Kyle.
Oh, we lost you, Kyle. It's a career-ending injury. If your career is fighting in a trench or fighting the Unions or the Confederates, all those guys.
Man, he got so mad. He was like, "I'm done with this."
He got so pissed that he's being disproven that demons exist.
I have a suspicion that it's hardware. You're still muted.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Oh,
you're not. There he is.
So, it would be a career-ending wound to say the least. You'd fucking die. And they created this device that just stretches the leg back out. It looks like it's kind of like a superstructure that goes over your hip all the way to the end of your leg, like a bird cage type apparatus.
Is it like a Chinese finger trap?
No, but more like a long
I think that's what the leg does in that situation.
But, stretches the leg back out so they can get those two shafts together so they can mend, and then the death rate just plummeted. Like that one thing was what they needed to do. Can you imagine growing up, like getting hurt in a time where the bone saw was the doctor's most common implement?
Dude, I would be. I've broken every limb at this point. Do you know what it would look like? I'd be a worm.
You wouldn't be Woody. You'd be Stumpy.
Yeah. No, he'd be Woody. He'd be the guy with two wooden legs.
You'd be like Lieutenant Dan.
Come Woody. He'll never sink.
When I broke my left arm, to set it, they had a thing that was basically, the Chinese finger toys. You put your hands in, and when you pull them, they get tighter. It was a device like that. It was for 6 fingers. I'm not sure why, but it had like 6 little finger traps. They put your hand in it, and then they put weights on your bicep, and it just pulls your forearm apart. That's how they set bones.
Yeah, I don't, because I'm under you.
It also doesn't sound like you're describing jujitsu.
There is a super lovely husband and wife couple where I trained, and they were Mormon. They were really like sweet and nice.
Mormon jujitsu people.
Yeah, it's true. And I really liked them both. And she was pretty good, but I don't know if she had more skill than me, but it wasn't close because I was so much bigger and stronger.
Yeah.
And but yeah, you just she'd lay there on her back, knees spread, and you get in her guard. And if you don't know, that just means missionary position. It's exactly the same.
Yeah.
And it's just like, this doesn't seem right, but here we are.
Yeah.
A Mormon who can do that. That's good tactics. It's like, I demand a moment of your time to talk about your Lord and Savior.
Just federal government agencies, federal government agencies recruit extensively from Mormon, Mormon groups. It's not a joke. Like they exhibit.
Why? When you say government agencies, you're talking about like the 3 letters, FBI, CIA.
Yeah. They find that Mormons are the perfect agents. They have this stable background. They have this established history. They're often from the correct socioeconomic groups. Like they plug right into that agency.
In case they get out of line, the CIA can be like, hey, Ezekiel and Isaiah and Jeremiah and Jedediah and Susie and Alan and the other half of your siblings are in trouble if you don't do this. Yeah.
Hey, if you mess with us, we'll destroy your house. That'll be at least 67 people.
Yeah.
They're people with roots. As another way of thinking of it. Whereas Enrique, who just hey, I'm not here for a long time. I'm here for a good time. Like, we don't give him top secret clearance.
Why not?
He seems happy about it.
I mean, like, none of us know shit about the CIA compared to Wendigoon. Is that true? Are the Mormons filling up our intelligence apparati? Do we need to be worried?
It makes a lot of sense because, like, the CIA, they've been reined back in recent years, but primarily, like, Cold War times and stuff, they were their own, like, dragon. Like, the FBI didn't like them, other agencies didn't like them. Even to this day, I know people in the FBI who are like, oh, those spooks, I don't want to work with them. Like, it's an entirely different machine.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
They're all late.
and then they're like, and don't get me started on the CIA. Like, like, damn, these guys are straight from the 50s. Just
wrap the show 17 minutes long. I'm loving it.
Yeah.
Good game, boys.
I think you are liking it now. Enzo gonna make you love it.
Want to keep doing the Italian hairdresser all the time.
New character.
Don't know how to do the voice so good.
the closeted Italian hairdresser. Yeah.
You're a hairdresser. Yeah. Woo! I had something I wanted to talk to Wendigoon about. We can jump in with that. So, I know from your channel you're very interested in these mystical woodland creatures and things. Very not just woodland, all over the place. Of all those you've researched, do any of them at all like trigger a thought in your mind to be like, this could be real? Or are you mostly at the end of it like, I can't buy in?
I do think that there is a large case for a lot of like ocean creatures, for one, right? So I'm going to leave those out of it because that's cheating, right?
Okay.
Okay.
As far as like, so I'm from Eastern Tennessee, right? So I spend a lot of the time in the woods, do a lot of camping, and there's some weird stuff that goes down you just don't explain, like just some noises, some carcasses you find that you're like, this is not right. And I'm also like, a Christian, a Sunday school teacher. So I also have the thought in my head, like, maybe it's just a demon. That makes me feel better for some reason.
Yeah.
So if there is any like supernatural or cryptid, so to speak, creature that would exist, I would probably say it would be in line with a lot of mythologies that go along the lines of like the rake or something like that. And I don't think maybe any one specific one of them is real, just maybe like some kind of creature that's unaccounted for, just something that isn't quite on the record yet.
Sure.
It's not an entirely out there, like, Bigfoot with antlers and giant wings. As much as I love the Mothman, probably not. But just something that we're not entirely aware of yet, that makes some noise at night that we don't pay attention to. Yeah.
That's totally believable.
I'm also like, I also lean toward that, not like the biblical demon, which is a fucking corrupted angel of the Lord, but like the idea of some sort of like, I don't know, other dimensional fucking weird being that's kind of here, but not really. And like, maybe sometimes it influences our world in some weird way, even if it's just being a cold spot or screaming real loud in the woods.
An in-betweener, so to speak. Yeah.
I don't know. I've never seen or heard anything that I couldn't explain with my ears or eyes one way or another. I remember when we were on our little survival trip that time with you, myself, and Chiz and Patrick, our cam man, and we heard some people way in the distance being I'm going to say they were being silly and partying by a fire, because that's not terrifying. Because what we heard was, woo! It sounded like there might be some deliverance shit going down, like they just had like fuck the guy or something,
or a demon ritual of sorts.
You never know, but it was so far away. But we're in like a silent forest. All you hear is crickets and all the forest life and quietness. So like a person's voice in those hills, those mountains carries so far. But it was scary. I was glad we had guns. I was like, I'm not worried about it at all. We've got fucking guns. I kind of hope they come over here and start some shit. Actually, let's go see what they're yelling about.
You better hope that it's like a physical being. Your guns are going to be nothing against demons.
Well, then we've got a cameraman. We're all millionaires now. We're the first ghost hunters to actually find a ghost.
The reason
if medals are going to be on us like Soviet commanders, it's going to be nuts.
The only thing we know for sure about ghosts is that if you like see one verifiably, like they probably are going to kill you, right? There'd be a lot more people with better stories.
We're the first men to beat up a ghost in the forests of Georgia, and our boy Patrick filmed it. We're cutting shiz out of this. It's a union thing. Woody took his tent flap, his rain guard, and choked the fucking ghost out. There was so much cosmic energy imbued in it from his anger earlier that day that he could choke a phantom with it.
And makes sense.
And we take a phantasm like prisoner. We'd be the first guys. So I have no fear of a phantasm or ghost. I would love to die that way if someone records it. It'd be cool. That's how I'd love to die.
It would be.
I'd like to be taken out a long time from now. Like at 91, there's no way I'm making it to 90. At 71.
Here's the thing. I think people that are our age, we still do that thing where 70 is so goddamn old, but every day 70 gets younger, if that makes sense. Like the people who will be 70-year-olds today are way better health-wise than 70-year-olds 10 years ago. And on and on and on and on and on, right? Like, there's a reason that like we keep living. Yeah, of course.
I thought we were getting fatter at a faster rate than all that.
But the healthcare system, like the life expectancy keeps going up. Has it gone? It hasn't started going down, has it? It's always.
I don't think we've never been like that.
COVID
great
doesn't count
with compared to like a lot of Europe.
That'd be like if a bomb went off, the average goes down.
It did.
But I don't think
Europe
has. Yeah, Europe doesn't have longer life expectancy because they have like way better. Well, they do have better medical care than us, but I think it's mostly that they're not all big fat fucks. Like way lower. Think about all the problems that being obese cause, and then like make a population like ours that's super fucking mega obese. It's gonna cause
super fucking mega obese. Just
a lot of obese.
Yes.
I don't know.
I'm just saying that by the time what I was getting at is
why can't they just be a normal guy who's class 1 obese?
But when you're 70,
Stage
that will be a
obese.
very different 70 probably than the 70 you picture. Like, you're, how old are you?
Me?
31.
40 years from now? We're talking about like 2060 something? Like 2060.
That is a long time from now.
I feel like we've got the spaceships then, right? Like we're on Mars in our Mars cars. Like it's 70, right? Like we'll get to see it then. They won't let us go up there, but your grandkids will get to go.
2060, Kyle will
and
have
maybe one of my dogs.
I mean,
I'm glad you brought that up. Maybe yeah, body modification. All right, I want to talk about ancient body modification. Maybe Wendigoon's ever had some of his creepy ass.
He's an expert. You mentioned before.
Because one of those things I saw was that I think it's that South American tribe that would practice the skull elongation, where they wrap the baby skulls, and you can see photographs of babies that have had it done, and their eyes are bulging. But what they end up with is these skulls that have been found down there, and they look like X-Files aliens. Okay, like legitimately, and they're real. They're human skulls that, through that practice, have been made to look like this. Now, here's what all of the ancient alien people always go to. They don't say those are alien babies, because of course we can DNA test them, or maybe, the rest of it's biologically human, whatever. They say, why were they doing that? Why did they want to look like that? Who were they trying to emulate? Maybe there was some sort of alien overlords that were coming down, teaching them agriculture and animal domestication. The beginning of the skill tree and Sith, pottery, and they had these big heads, and they were like, if only we could look like the gods. Because imagine, if you will, because in Christianity and all of the Abrahamic religions, right? Like God looks like us. It's a key part of it. It's right there in the beginning somewhere. If your God didn't look like you, it is.
We are made in his image. Yeah.
Imagine if God didn't look like us. How
is that a real one? No,
I don't think. That's not a real one.
Beavis and Butthead's jaw.
Well, I don't know what Zach's trying to do to me here, but there are real skulls. I don't know. Why don't you pull up that X-Files alien autopsy footage from the 90s too? Like,
you know what's funny? It's like, Kyle, I was I was putting like stock into what you were saying, and like this image, like it didn't
really that just undermined your story.
God damn it, Zach.
So you think it was some alien emulation of? I was thinking like,
I don't think that at all. No. I'm just saying, like, I've often watched those shows where that's their pitch. Like, hey, this is why they did it. Because they want to tie everything that's a little peculiar in the past to aliens, right? And if you can like rope that one in to make that sort of a supporting argument for whatever other kooky shit you've got, like chariots in the Bible being spaceships or whatever, like that's a good one to start with.
For sure. The Bible talks about, Wendigoon absolutely knows more about this, but like you're familiar with like the Nephilim and all of that.
Oh, I?
I would love
audience members who haven't heard of it. Can you bring them up to speed?
Yeah. So, all right, 5 minutes out the gate, we're in my zone. Let's go.
Hell yeah.
So, in the Bible, there's mentions of things called Nephilim, which also often translates to giants or mighty men, and they're mentioned in the Book of Genesis as being the children of what happened when the sons of God mingled with the daughters of men. So some people think this to be the idea of righteous people with unrighteous people, but some take that literally and think it's the products of angels breeding with humans. There's mentions of angels coming down to earth, so a lot of people draw that out of it. See, they got Kyle. It was
You're dangerous. I'm going to keep the head on his
yeah, Taylor's next. Don't worry. Anyway, so giants are mentioned in the Bible. There's some famous ones like Goliath, for example. There's a giant that I believe it was Noah faced giants in his age. So there's a few places that they're mentioned specifically, but there's this idea throughout the Old Testament that they were a reoccurring thing. Like whenever it talks about they go to Canaan, that they see giants in the land of milk and honey that they have to wipe out. There's giants among the Philistines, what have you. So the idea is there's this biblical record of giants, and there's also a record of giants throughout other written histories. Like pretty much every group of people either had a legend or history of giants somewhere in their culture. They tend to pop up around the historical record. And the idea is, since the Bible is the oldest, in my opinion, the oldest, debated between that and like Zoroastrianism as being the oldest religion ever, that it's the first evidence of giants existing. And in the Bible, they're called Nephilim. So yes, Nephilim are like the starting route for a ton of crazy.
I'm sorry to interject.
Theories.
We had a guest like 2 months ago arguing with me, telling me that Zoroastrianism wasn't the first religion. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I watched that episode.
I do remember that. Yeah.
That was Aiden. Yeah.
I remember that became more of an argument than I thought it would be. And I was just kind of like, oh, damn. Like now we're like getting heated over like demons and shit.
If it helps Kyle any, the theory that most people have, like myself, who believe that Christianity was, or like the Bible, Judaism at the time was first, is that Judaism and Zoroastrianism were simultaneous, that they kind of branched out at the same point in the historical record. Which I have my own theories that Zoroastrianism is mentioned in the Old Testament as being other religions that are mentioned around the time of Abraham, but blah, blah, blah. You see what I mean? You got me in my zone.
No, that's interesting.
Well, I have been admiring.
Yeah,
this,
I like the
stuff. I was like, it's cool when we have like a professional level guest on the show.
I like where I'm a Sunday school teacher. Like, you know, a lot of what I do is talking to, you know, people my age and stuff. They're like, oh, well, you know, Christ wants us to live this way, blah, blah, blah. But there's also a lot of, all right, kids, so I found this verse in Genesis. I think it means that aliens came to Israel, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I get to go on my whole rants and stuff. So
that's
so fun. The Bible is kind of exacting when they give the dimensions of something like the ark. Did they ever tell us about how tall these giants are supposed to be? Because that's so important.
Yes, yeah, it does. Whenever it mentions Goliath, which is, there's times that it mentions giants who stand with their waist at the height of man. That's more general. Goliath is specifically mentioned as, I think, 9.5 feet tall.
Yeah, shit. Well, all right.
Like Robert Wadlow size.
Now, when you say 9.5 feet, are you accounting for like their feet being tiny? Did they actually use their foot as a foot in that time? Because to be fair, these are poorly fed Jewish men.
That's true.
About 5,000 years ago.
Correct.
These are small fellas.
Well, I think they used the measurement from your elbow to your wrist or something like that.
They use the measurement of cubits. They use the measurement of cubits. If I remember, it says that he was 6 cubits and a span, which a cubit's about 1.5 feet. So that comes out to a little over 9.5 feet.
Yeah, see, that's the problem. So like, obviously there you're dealing with some exaggeration because like I don't believe that in that time, even with like a pituitary thing or whatever makes people gigantic, that he'd have like the diet capable of surviving to manhood and being a 9 foot tall being.
No, you know what would be funny is like if like that's entirely true, but Goliath was one of those pituitary giants. And so he went out to fight David, and they're like, there he is, the giant. And he has like crutches. He's like, oh, look at that beast. And they just bully him with a stone. We were going to see if you guys had any medical intervention for him. God, don't kill him.
Old school.
Do you know about the Potsdam giants?
That sounds familiar.
So it was a Prussian infantry unit in like 1675. All right. Now, I can't remember if it was like the Prince of Prussia or the guy in charge, or at least in charge enough that he could have his own military unit at his whim, selected only the tallest men in the whole fucking Prussian Empire. Yeah.
Stupid question. Where is the tech tree in 1685? Like,
they got like shitty guns, like
early Imperial Age. You have access to trebuchets,
like stuff. Yeah.
Shitty guns. There'd be a lot of cavalry and still like armor, I would imagine, and like silly hats with points on them, and probably lots, swords and pikes and shit.
Swords, pikes, and the occasional.
We're 100 years from the American Revolution, and like guns being that good.
Yeah, they were like, that's the time they were figuring out, like, we got to phase out armor because we're now making like muskets that can blast through stuff.
Well, anyway, this guy who I think was probably gay was like fascinated with tall men. Okay, it was like his jam. So he like searches the kingdom. And
there's gay about that.
There's this quote from him.
Hey, watch your mouth.
There's this great quote. And he's like,
wow, you can't have a harem of tall men or it's gay.
He's got this great quote. I want Zach to find it. Well, I've given some context clues to his identity. I just can't remember the fucking, Prince of Prussia's name. But he said something like, keep your this, keep your that, give me a tall man.
All right, you may be onto something.
But he was like, this would be a good video, I think, because like this regiment apparently was really tall guys, because he searched the whole like country and he even had a breeding program where he was trying to like pair up the tallest women and the tallest men to, make an even taller regiment. He never used them in battle because he was so beloved. They were so beloved.
What on earth?
I'm looking at his Wikipedia. The height of the king who organized this, 5'3". And so imagine how monstrous this battalion, and apparently the minimum height was 6'2", which back then is enormous.
Today, 400 years ago, the tallest guy in a room.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Like if you're 6'2", 400 years ago, like you're probably starting conversations walking.
I bet he would find us the average height for the time, Zach, because that's important. But I would guess that you're like Harley, essentially. Like you're like a 6'5", 6'6" guy. Like everybody's like, oh shit, one of them are here.
Yeah. Yeah, they'd think there's something like wrong with you, or they'd be just like jealous of like, wow, that guy gets to eat every day.
No, it'd be hard to be like, again, I think it would be, there's a reason people used to be smaller, and because it didn't work to be big. Like a big man can't like work. All right, if you're 5'5", you do a day's work, that gives you enough grain to support your 5'5" body or whatever from the boss. I just don't think the 6'6" guy can do enough work to get him enough grain to like make up the difference. You know what I mean? He's not working hard enough to get enough grain more than the other guy. We're all getting fed the same.
I wonder if we got shorter after agriculture. Is that something I made? Like when we like that people were taller, that like some hunter, or maybe this is like some other thing. They found like hunter-gatherer tribes that are pretty tall because they ate like so much meat, like Neanderthals, or I guess Neanderthals are like a kind of a different thing.
Giant.
Yeah, it was the
circles back in. Yeah, there you go.
All circles back in.
Does that mean the angels are black?
No.
What?
Angels are it's a total misconception that angels are even people, man. You've read the Bible. You've seen the orb of eyes.
I had to make a black joke. The athleticism. I know it's not theologically correct.
No, see, that's not canon.
The ophonym, right? The
canon. I love calling the Bible canon.
Like this is something like one of the conspiracy rabbit holes. Like I keep trying to go down, but I can't find anything good for it. So like Antarctica, what the fuck is going on down there? And why,
Is
if
that the
you
question?
so like there are military bases down there, like lots of countries have military bases down there, and if you show up in Antarctica, they will kill you. They will shoot you in the head. They'll like as you're like if you just take a boat to Antarctica, get off and start walking around, they will kill you. Like
You
I did not know about this.
Yeah.
I didn't know about this at all, and I was well, what the fuck? What's going on?
Is that first of all? Did you get that from a good source? I didn't know that. Is that true?
Yeah, it came to me in a dream.
He's got my vote.
Now I know.
That'd be the worst source I can imagine.
There's this is like not like I saw some like the conspiratorial part is like, oh, there's something under the ice out there, and there's like an underground civilization or the remains of Atlantis, that kind of thing or whatever. Maybe not Atlantis. Maybe I'm making that up.
Maybe.
But like the part that's not really debated is like, yeah, you cannot go to Antarctica. Like you can't go there. They'll shoot you.
Yeah. So I've heard of people. I don't know if it's immediately they just execute you. From what I've heard, they're like, leave. Get off, because you can't privately make your way to Antarctica, because there's some weird treaty with Antarctica. It's called I forget the word for it. Essentially, no nation can place ownership over it or like
it's all scientific research.
Place a fact. Yeah, it's all scientific research, which is the
reason
law
but that implies there's no law there technically. So I think they're going to have a hard time arresting me under any real powers. Maybe maritime law. Is maritime?
I don't
law
think
apply?
it's illegal. I think it's a very gray area. They're just like, get out, essentially.
They consider me a pirate if I like grabbed my my retarded Malamute and started sledding deep into the Antarctic center.
You wouldn't be sledding deep.
Look, he's a big boy, goddammit.
He is strong. He has the power of 3 normal dogs.
He has 3 dog power.
No loud noises, though.
So the conspiracy around Antarctica begins with World War II. There was a German research base in Antarctica called Camp something rather, I forget, but some number designation. Anyway, after the war was over in 1947, they sent a admiral by the name of Admiral Byrd to Antarctica in something called Operation High Jump, where he was sent with, I think, 20 men total to just like reconnoiter, investigate whatever the Germans were doing down there, to check out their facilities. And whenever they got back, they were all given a gag order and the Medal of Honor. And that's it. So
they were all given a gag order in the medal. All of them were given the Medal of Honor?
They were placed on like a 48-hour debrief, if I recall correctly. They were ordered to never speak about what they found, which that part's, probably pretty standard to most, military reconnoiter operations.
I think you did. I think they stopped Hitler from being able to acquire alien technology down there, and they brought it home.
Now we're on the right path.
I don't think Hitler.
I think Hitler was down there. So my favorite
Antarctica.
My favorite conspiracy theory, the one that I crave to be real, is the ancient civilizations one. The one, and when they lay out the timeline of the Earth's life, you're like, oh shit, this one does kind of make a bit of sense, right?
Like Atlantis, because they're like, yeah.
We've only been here for such a short period of time, like our civilization, like the last 6,000 years that we've actually recorded and can remember more or less. And the planet's been habitable, and we've been humans like we are for a very long time. Like we could have easily peaked and like been like pyramid building, and then lost that and then 50,000 years went by. We resorted back to like hunter gathering people who don't even understand agriculture, and then we could have done it 3 or 4 times in the amount of time there's just no evidence for it, right? And so that's when you got to look to places like maybe Antarctica, maybe like wasn't that a tropical place a long time ago? Probably predating humans, but I know at some point it was like maybe close to where Australia is.
Over like enough millions of years, all that shit's cyclical, right? With like because
you had Pangea or something, right, where everything was one giant megacontinent and then it broke up. But for a long time, I think Antarctica was more of a tropical thing, like in the Australia area ish.
If there was something that like changed in elevation, we would have found that under the seas by now. Or no, because I guess that we really haven't been.
I don't think we've charted the seas very well.
What do you mean by change in elevation? Like if there was...
Like if it was like, oh, there was this that's the only one I know, so I keep saying Atlantis. Oh, it used to be here, and then water levels changed a million years ago, and now it's deep under the sea or something.
That's actually fairly common. Not just in like ancient civilizations, like the Greek city of... Man, I know all this stuff until I'm asked about it. There was a Greek city near the coast that was like this sprawling... landscape that was flooded in, I forget when. That's supposedly the inspiration for stories of Atlantis. There's also one off the coast of what's the country that gets hit by tsunamis all the time? It's not Japan, Southeast Asia.
Indonesia?
I think Indonesia. There was a city that was built in like the 1300s that had gone completely underwater. And what was wild is a couple years ago when they got hit with their last tsunami, this place has been underwater for hundreds of years. When the water drew back before the wave, for the first time, the entire city, like this underwater city with these statues and buildings, the footage of it's wild.
That's really cool.
The people who took the footage were having a terrible time.
I really like the idea of ancient forgotten technologies that might differ from ours greatly enough that they would be cool and interesting and maybe something could be discoverable. I think that Baghdad battery shit is bullshit. I don't give a goddamn. It was probably a sex toy. They were putting that thing on somebody's clit to like.
I don't know what that is.
They found these like primitive like makeshift batteries. It's like a clay pot with I think you got like an acidic solution and maybe a copper tube or something like that, and maybe there's another metal that's involved. But in any case, it could form an ancient battery. You could make an electrical charge. And but they're not powering laptops back then with that thing. They're fucking like sticking their dicks in it because it feels weird.
They're shocking each other for fun.
Yeah, I that's probably like I could imagine a religious ritual where they use science to like reinforce religion the way that remember in what's that awesome Mel Gibson movie the Apocalypto, when they know the eclipse is coming and the priest kind of looks over at the head honcho like, yeah, it's coming. And by priest, he's like he's an astronomer, like from 1,000 years ago. And he's just like, here it comes. And so the king is like, bah, 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 the sun disappears. And they're like, holy shit, the boss made this. And then he's like, and come back. Like as soon as the priest gives him the go ahead nod for that. And it's like, you can imagine how you're going to get in line for a man who does something like that. Like a guy who can make the sun disappear and come back.
Mm-hmm.
That's magic. Someone knowing that the sun is going, they wouldn't even think of it that way. They'd never take that extra leap, like, because how could you know it was coming, right? Unless you understood astronomy.
Yeah.
No, I like that a lot. The idea of lost civilizations and that stuff just being eaten by the
ravages of time.
Well, yeah, the way the Earth's crust goes under itself and just gets eaten over and over until there's no, it's just gone. It's gone.
It is wild to think about like buried cities. Like we build civilization on top of civilization, and think of like everything that's sunk underneath. Concepts of sunken cities from like old lore, not like in the ocean, like the land gave way and there's these underground caverns.
Well, there's that thing in have you seen the thing, the Graham Hancock stuff about the Göbekli Tepe place in Turkey?
I've heard of it, and it's supposed to be like a super old civilization, or some people theorize that.
Yeah, that Graham Hancock guy, he's been on Rogan a bunch of times. I read his books; they're good. But he thinks that a comet came and melted flash melted a huge ice cap and flooded out this ancient civilization that existed like 10 or 20,000 years ago in Turkey. And they found this huge structure that was built there, and people should have been like hunter gatherers with stone tools back then, and instead you would have had to have like a civilization, because somebody's got to be hunting and gathering to get extra food so that you can have artisans who could even make something, like that. And supposedly
you kind of need agriculture.
So that's an interesting one. I don't know. I like that stuff a lot. I like lost mysteries. And the other one I really like is the idea of life being on one of the moons of Saturn or Jupiter, maybe like under the ice.
What's the one everyone says is super habitable?
Titan, maybe.
I think Titan.
Europa.
That sounds right.
There's a movie about Europa. Yeah.
What is it called? Is that?
I think it's Titan.
Titan.
I think Titan's the one everyone says that like it's almost habitable.
I don't want to live on any of them.
And no. It's a couple kilometers of ice at least, and then but then you've got a warm.
Yeah, that's
ocean.
habitable.
But you've got a warm ocean down
briefly.
Yeah.
And I think
anything's habitable for small amounts of time.
Very briefly.
I think that like the most ambitious scientists think that there's probably like some amoebas or some like bacteria down there that feeds off of thermal activity. But I really want
ocean
there to
monsters.
I don't give a shit about that.
I need mermaids.
I need something with hands for me to really care. Like something that made tools.
If I get there and the fish has hands, I'm going back.
Yeah.
I'm not interested.
Well, that would just confirm it's like, oh, so somebody had a nuclear apocalypse here a long time ago. And now all the fish are peeling their kelp at the bottom of the sea or whatever the fuck. Yeah, I couldn't think of anything they would do with hands. Seems like a bad idea. But
I've been looking at a bunch of like weird sci-fi. I wanted a new sci-fi book, so I've been watching YouTube videos about various like sci-fi authors. And it might be an Isaac Asimov. I don't know who wrote this one, but the premise is that aliens come to Earth and they just sort of like hover over us, and we do try to attack them, but it like bounces off, and they're like, "Chill, listen, we're here to help. Our bosses sent us here to get you guys up to speed. You're going to join the Galactic Federation. You can't look at us though. We're rough looking. Okay, we're going to hang out here for a while. When you get used to us, our ships and then communicating with us, then we'll reveal ourselves." And that goes on for like many years, like 10, 20, I don't know how many, like call it 10, 15 years. And sure enough, they've really enriched humanity lately. Technology's better, culture's better, everything's better. And they're like, all right, it's time. Chill though, right? And they like step out of their craft and they literally look like the devil. They literally look like the devil, like horns and pointy tails and like pointy teeth and claws. But there's no twist. Yeah, they're just nice. They really are these like ambivalent, nice people. They're like, don't be scared. We know that a lot of people get scared of us and all. I'm Mark.
This is my husband Alan, and it's like, oh, they're positive. Like,
I've been looking for a new one to read. It's that or Helldivers. I kind of want to go back to the Helldivers series.
What's
and finish
Helldivers?
That. That's the one where
the average life is 10 jumps, and this guy's on jump 95, and he's hard ass. I remember.
Yeah,
that.
the Earth's all poisoned, and we live in the sky on a hover ship. Those books are fun.
I want to read a book about Antarctica. I don't care if it is 100% whole cloth made up. Like I just like it's a fun story. Yeah, just start off with something kind of fun where it's like the Nazis left, and then just make it up.
Yep. Just have a good time. That's all that matters.
That's what matters in all these theories, that you're having a fun time.
Exactly. The funnest part about it is there was a second Operation High Jump, if I remember, like in the 60s or the 70s, when a group supposedly went to Antarctica. One of the funnest theories is that they took cameras there and had like this broken footage of like plant life they discovered and like a civilization of people under the ice. Love it. Fantastic. I believe it. Don't need any further information.
I want to believe
all living under the ice.
I want a picture of them.
Because our existence is a little boring at times, right? Like, like the stuff that happens in movies is so dynamic and big and earth changing, and nothing really big has ever happened in our lifetimes. Not really. Like even to us, it doesn't feel real, But I want something that's so big that even if you're not touched by it, it feels big. Like I want to discover some aliens. Or do a thing, right?
Seems like it'd have to be aliens, right? Like what else could it be?
I do want, or one of those lost civilizations. I want to find some mole people under Antarctica, and they've been under there for like 80,000 years. And their technology is way better than ours,
or way worse. I'm fine with that.
But they're mole people, so we just beat the fuck out of them.
I can't wait to kill it. Yeah.
Or aliens show up and they're like pedaling. And we're like, this is totally different. But have you ever been like researching a conspiracy or something wild for a video? And you're like, after a few hours, days, whatever, you're like, oh, this is getting a little too real and wild. Not this one. Let's find a different one.
Yes,
what are some examples of that? If you
so the one that really like did me in was I went really down all the Epstein stuff when that happened.
Yes, yeah.
And this was before like I did the YouTube stuff. I was just like, is it is it really that bad? And then I remember like getting legitimately depressed. I got so into that. I got so into looking where money was going. I got so into who owned these places, who like went where. I just got depressed because I'm like, man, it really is everyone, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that it was like people joke about like, oh, the black pill. I remember being like, wow, everyone is evil everywhere. That is so sad. I remember like having to step away from that and just kind of take a moment to like reevaluate myself.
Yeah.
But like I've come to peace with it now. Of like, you know, my worth isn't reliant on those who have greater faculty or power above me or whatever. But man, I tell you what, that was sad. That would be the big one. There's been some other minor ones that I've like sort of like dabbled in. That I'm like, I don't want to know how much more of this I want to find out about. One of them was the Benghazi stuff. I got really into that more recently, like in the past year. And I remember researching that and being like, this is depressing.
Yeah.
Because it's not like I don't come up with the stuff like, aha, everyone who's in charge of us is evil people, whatever, and be like, I figured it out. It's just like, well, dang it.
You're just telling it like it was.
Yeah, pretty much like, man, whatever.
You're just I didn't know there were this many pedophiles.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess I'm gonna go walk in the woods now. So.
That is funny, like how the Epstein thing.
Real quick. I'll be right
like
back.
When it first came out, people were like, right. So there's just a bunch of pedophiles in positions of power all over the world. And then you look into it and it's like, wow, there are pedophiles in positions of power all over the world.
I heard that was used to control each other. It was like that it was, I mean, you would probably have heard this at some point or something, but it was used as a means to control each other. Like you are in the circle of trust because we have all committed this heinous, disgusting act. And so it is used as a means of controlling each other and committing to the team because you're all disgusting people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mutual blackmail.
We had a similar
it's like if we go down, you're coming with us. So you better do what we say.
I remember where I live in Tennessee now, but I'm originally from like Eastern Kentucky, like in the coal country of it. And there's a lot of gangs around like before my time mainly, but like during my dad's time and all that, the gangs or the Mountain Mafia, as they were called, were real popular whenever they were breaking up picket lines and there were shootouts everywhere. And part of the deal was whenever there were new initiates, they did a lot of stuff like blew up bridges, blew up coal trucks, stuff like that. If they were to ever like shoot something or blow it up, they would find some way for everyone's hand to be on it. Like if you show up, you are going to shoot the vehicle or you're going to have some part in place in it because the first time you have to be like mutual blackmail and that just scales up. So like for a bunch of guys in the mountain, it's shooting up a coal truck. For like, you know, Hillary Clinton, it's eating a baby. It's just a natural.
Yeah, it's wild. It's the world is like I'm not nearly as into
weird
it
timeline,
but like it gets depressing when you like look into some stuff where it's like, oh man, people are genuinely very cruel to one another, and that makes me sad.
I remember I used to be like in high school, I was I think I got like most likely to be president, some superlative, and I was on a bunch of debate teams and stuff like that. And I was like really into politics, and then that happened, and I just like. I was like, I'd never want to look at someone in a suit ever again. Like it really did poison me to a point of bitterness for a while. Like I said, I'm better now, but yeah, you asked like what was the one that hit too deep? That one really hit too deep. Yeah,
it makes sense. That's a good answer. I was expecting something like that, like where you just get it's like you stare too long into the abyss and it begins to stare back into you. You spend all this time obsessing about and reading about something that is horrific. And then you start to be like, man, little bits of my soul are like flaking off as I'm reading this. Like I'm becoming actively more cynical by
also this like not just with that specifically, but with a lot of like grander conspiracy, like stuff like the MLK assassination or JFK or whatever. There's this sense of hopelessness or like just inability of action. Like, oh, what am I going to do? Catch these guys, or no matter how many people I tell, it's not going to get better, right?
Yeah.
And that leads to a sort of, I guess it can lead to nihilism if someone sits in it for too long. But like I said, it's just got to be something that you kind of recognize. It doesn't define you just because it's happening and you can't do anything about it. You're not your inactions. But yeah, I had an entire soul searching thing over the Epstein stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Are you still like following any of the Ghislaine stuff as that was going on?
Yeah. I've got my own theories about all that. I don't. It's kind of like. It's kind of like a train wreck, but the train wreck's halfway done. Like, you know, like the front car hit and everything crashed. And it's not like, well, I hope the back of the train will stop doing that. No, it's just going to keep piling up over and over. I kept up with it, but not as much as I did originally. Because like I said, you can't, or at least I can't, super invest my time. Like, man, I hope justice is served, because I know the answer and it's just going to make me sad again.
Yeah, it's not going to be served. And it's funny. Like at first, like so many people are like, "Oh, this isn't happening. There's no pedophile island." And then now, like some of those same people are like, "We got him. The two people on Earth who were doing this, we got them. Don't worry, guys. This was a one-off. It's never going to happen again. It's certainly not happening with other individuals as we speak right now. We got them, everyone. Mission accomplished." It's like, I don't know. Yeah, it's literally like Bush on that fucking destroyer.
Two people. Yeah.
Well, that thing we said was a conspiracy lie for years was true. Thankfully, the only two individuals globally involved in this have been caught. One of them killing himself when a camera misfired and a bunch of people who didn't work there found their way into his fucking cell.
What if that's the way they said he died? That the camera that was recording him exploded and killed him.
That'd be a little bit more obvious.
He was electrocuted by the camera. Oh, do we have that on film? Well, think about that one. Why are you asking tough questions? All right.
The conspiracy would be a little more obvious.
He was a terrible person at hanging himself and bruising and breaking that many ribs. Like, I
mean, what, he never done it before?
Well, the guy who ended up doing it, at least according to McAfee, before he also CO'd himself.
Okay.
That guy was a.
Well, hold on. I got an okay from Kyle. Go ahead. What was that?
Well, I mean, all right. McAfee was
he was on our show.
No.
He's a goof.
I didn't know that he was on the show. That's interesting. No, I'm not saying that he was murdered. I do think that he did commit suicide. I wasn't being sarcastic on that one. I literally meant he did CO himself.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the guy that McAfee tweeted and was like, "This is the guy in the jail," which he was right. The dude who was a former cop in New York was the one who was. You remember how Epstein was like almost strangled a week before he died?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that guy did get like moved and separated and all that, but then they kept him in the same jail and like on the same cell block or whatever, and he was a couple cells down whenever the cameras went out. Mm-hmm. And like the room that Epstein died in was previously that guy's room, so it's like, oh, of course it's gonna have DNA and fingerprints and blood and whatever all over the place. Yeah, just I went down the rabbit hole, stuff like that. It really it hurt a lot. Yeah.
It's interesting.
Kyle, are you okay? You look.
I love spooky supernatural stuff, or just hallucinations. All
right. If you do, then like I mentioned him a minute ago, but Wendigoon, he's I watched his video about like sea mysteries, and maybe I was just in the right mood and the lighting in the room was right. It was like 2 a.m. when I watched too. It was creeping me out. I was getting like the chills a little bit. Like I was getting a little uncomfortable.
You were getting those goosebumps,
pulling the blanket up a little bit.
Yeah, because he's telling a story of like this turn of the century boat going from America to Europe, and the captain brings his wife and his like young child. He crews the ship with 15 good men, like half of which are close friends and confidants, all experienced sailing men carrying 1,000 barrels of ethanol to Europe. And the ship is found about a few hundred miles off the coast of Europe, completely empty, with no signs of struggle. Food is on the tables. Ink and parchment is out on the table, so the ship couldn't have rocked very much. there's a little water in the hole, but that's kind of standard for those ships of that age.
Found it?
And one, I'll get to that. And one of the lifeboats, the ropes have been cut and it's missing. So like, Wendigoon makes the point that like in that time you wouldn't cut your rope as a sailor at sea on a cross Atlantic voyage.
Yeah,
you have so much rope, and then you have no rope. And rope is your rigging is your life out there because your sail is your life.
You need it. Yeah,
they need that rope. You wouldn't cut the rope except in an emergency. We need it now. There's no time to like untie a knot. 10 seconds doesn't exist here. We need, and so the people who find it, another experienced captain who takes the ship in to get the salvage rights. So then there's a court proceeding to determine if everything's legit because you have and so like they investigated this thing thoroughly and came up with every conceivable theory. And in the end, no one has any idea what happened to the captain, his family, his 12 or 15 crew. They can't come up with a scenario that makes sense for them to abandon their ship like that. And the other thing, the valuable cargo.
Was there anything stolen from the ship?
No, that's what I was going to say. The valuable cargo is there. The captain's sword is in his quarters. You'd think that, if things got rough, he'd have the sword, not under his bed.
Pretty logical.
Yeah. So what was the conclusion of it? Like they have no idea.
So he tells like 5 or 6 stories about the sea in this one video. And the end of every story is, who knows? like no one knows. And that all the cargo is intact, 1,000 barrels of ethanol, which I suppose is like reasonably valuable at the time. Certainly not a small amount of money. Yeah, it's
ethanol.
For some reason, those creep me out. It's alcohol.
Yeah. So it's just alcohol.
It's alcohol for industrial use.
Oh, okay.
It's not ghosts, right? It's not bullshit. It's
no.
Not so why would people leave the ship quickly?
If you think the ship's going to go down, you leave the ship. If the ship is like in a position where you think she's going down, and the life boat is a more reasonable choice than staying on board. So you got to think of like all the scenarios in which that thought occurs to you.
Fleeing from pirates, weirdly.
Pirates would rob you, right? They take the ethanol, you think. So like in my mind, I have to get so convoluted. I'm like, all right, maybe pirates come, but it goes bad, and the captain's family is killed, and one pirate turns on the other pirate, and he kills that pirate because he doesn't like that a family's been killed. He's there for the money, not for all this craziness. And then everybody had to go. But no, that doesn't work.
It doesn't make any sense.
There's no blood. There's no like sign of struggle. I want to say that the 300-pound block that they put the compass in, I don't know what those are called. It's some nautical term for the thing the compass goes in on a sailboat. It's a big thing. That was knocked over, which was odd because it's heavy. And
so I'm assuming in all these examples, everybody who jumped ship and like got on the lifeboat, they died before they got to shore. So there was never anyone.
They never found a body.
The SS Ulysses. I was on that. What happened was XYZ.
No. This is like 15 men who were never seen from again. Another one was more modern. This was that because the first one's 100 years ago. The second one was 3 guys on what looked like a catamaran, like maybe like fishing vessel type thing.
Yeah.
And like all 3 of them somehow they found the boat. With the sail ripped, empty, and the food was laid out on the table again. The engine was in neutral, and there's a fishing pole out on the deck, and the fishing line is the hook is in the rigging under the boat. These are all the clues we have, and so they had to do another one of these like coroner's report things in a situation like this, and the coroner has to write the most plausible thing for what he thinks happened. And his is that guy gets his fishing line stuck, falls in the water. The other guy says, "Oh no, I'll save you." He jumps in the water. Third guy throws the boat in neutral because 2 of his friends are in the water, and the mast swings around and hits him Three Stooges style, knocking him into the water, and the boat cruises off, leaving them all to die.
This doesn't make any sense.
That's what Wendigoon said. He's like, so it needs to be like some sort of slapstick comedy style.
You need Moe and Curly to make that work.
Clean out the whole ship. They're all gone. Yeah. What about a methane gas bubble? But that would probably sink the ship too.
So if something like that happens, then maybe that could explain people abandoning a ship, though, right? But that wasn't the case. The boat didn't have water in it, and in the case of in one of the instances, the records were so meticulous that you could tell the hour that it had happened. He was like, all right, it happened between 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. on August the 3rd. Something happened. And because there's an account from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. and then 9 a.m. to 10 never happens.
That is bizarre.
It is, and these make for very creepy stories.
Yeah, he's got
that could be you.
Stories. He's got.
You could go on a boat with your friends and just disappear. You don't.
Dude,
know.
the ocean is so fucking scary, and
it's
that was
scariest. Like demons are arguably the least scary thing out there because I don't know if demons can swim. Sharks can, octopus can. Everything in there that wants to eat you can. Like
the ocean's like a big murder factory. Like if Aquaman could hear, he would just hear constant screaming of everything eating everything else constantly. In the ocean.
Have you never like read those like excerpts or vignettes from soldiers who were part of like a destroyer in the Pacific that got sank in World War II, and they're just like hanging out, bobbing for hours and hours,
Sharks
waiting for rescue. And there's like they have people writing journals, like some of the soldiers, like and every so often someone just gets torn down, and it's like you're just waiting for yourself to be that.
I don't know how many sharks there were. Maybe 500.
Doll's eye, dark eyes like a doll's eyes. Yeah, fucked up shit. That's very interesting though. And Drifter transitioning seamlessly to the standing desk.
I usually mute and try to do it less noticeably. The motor can be a little loud.
No, we didn't hear a thing. That's the USS Indianapolis, right? The World War II bomb transporting ship. That
it might be. I don't know many of the U.S. I think they surrendered on the USS Missouri. There was a USS Connecticut or something that got sank during the war. I don't know the USSs.
So I don't know if I'm making a joke or not, but I'm talking about the boat from the Jaws story. That's a true story, about the boat going down and the men in the water with the sharks. That happened.
Well, I'm sure it happened a lot of times throughout history where a boat goes down and there's sharks.
No. The spooky story they tell the night before in Jaws.
Jaws is based on that bull shark or whatever that swam up the Jersey River and like attacked a few people in that brackish water inland. They loosely based it on that. But the story that Quint tells in they're down below deck drinking, showing off scars, right? And laughing it up. You see this one? No, broken heart. She broke my heart, and they all laugh it up. And he's like, "What about that one? What about that one?" And he gets real sober and quiet. And that's old tattoo I had removed. What did it say, Mom? It said USS Indianapolis. He's like, "You were on the Indianapolis?" Yeah. And Roy Schneider's like, "What happened? Tell me the story." And it's just like not a happy story. They were transporting the fucking bomb. And the mission was so secret that they never radioed that their boat had been torpedoed because their boat wasn't supposed to be there. So like 1,500 men or something go into the water, burnt badly in oil slicks that are still burning in some cases, covered in oil, shit, blood, and death as the ship sinks, and no one's going to be coming looking for them for a week or something like that. And they're bobbing up and down, and the sharks show up, and it's the Pacific fucking Ocean. So there's a lot of them. And they ate hundreds of men.